Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan. And the night has finally arrived. Tonight, the Eagles will engage with the other teams in the NFL in the first round of the NFL draft. They are slated to pick 10th and 30th. If they do, that might be a major miracle. Nope, just kidding, Adam. But it's a big night, and I'm looking forward to not only this podcast, tying up loose ends, but obviously we've got a lot of great draft coverage starting Thursday night tonight. You, me, Greg Cosell from 6 to 7:30. We're going to be doing a special pre-draft show. To be available on stream on our YouTube channels, our other socials. We'll probably have it up on the podcast platform to have people listen to it right before the draft starts if they need to be. And then Friday, we're going to be recapping day 2. And then Saturday, we're getting Andrew DeCecco involved. And even during the first round of the draft, we're going to have Greg Cosell recapping some of the picks as they're being made and some of the moves. So it should be a great time.
Yeah, looking forward to it, no doubt. Tonight is a pretty special night for all 30. Well, I know some teams have to get picks, but for any team that's picking the first round, it's like Christmas Day. It really is for them because this is how you build your football team. You supplement through the draft. You supplement, through free agency like the Eagles have done for years and done very well with it for the most part. It's where the draft, though, where in recent years it looks better. We know what happened in 2020, 2019, 2017. So things have to be better, but the process is what it's all about. We're certainly going to get into that today.
Absolutely. We'll get into the process. We'll go through some of the picks that we think might be around there. We did do our annual first round NFL mock draft with Andrew DeCecco earlier in the week. Came out really well. Now, we got a lot of sort of flack for it, I guess. There was a lot of meh. You guys took Peter Skoronski at 10 overall. What a meh pick. I mean, I didn't realize the draft was a beauty contest. I thought it was just supposed to be the best player available.
Right. Yeah. So with that one, it was kind of like, okay, we're working on where they're at with Jalen Carter because there's a possibility he's there for them at 10. A lot of that's going to depend on what Seattle does, if they pass on him or not. And then kind of what are the trade up possibilities, trade down possibilities. We're still looking to that for a Tonight Show with Greg from 6 to 7:30. But the fact of the matter is we don't do trades on our mock. Okay, whoever's there, who's the guy. And based on the guys who were talking about who were going to be there, it was Skoronski who would fill that need at right guard. That is a major opening for them, for not only for this year, but for the future. They don't have their right guard for this year or next year. And that's why we're thinking about it.
Of course. I mean, there's nothing wrong. I mean, I think I brought up, I don't know why, if you looked at the careers of Zach Martin, a great right guard, and the career of Ezekiel Elliott, who was a great running back for his first 3 years, but obviously not so much over the last 3 or 4, you would take, for your franchise, you would take Zach Martin every single day of the week over an Ezekiel Elliott. Plus, it's also easier to find a productive running back than it is, a Pro Bowl caliber right guard as well. So I didn't think it was a bad decision on our part. I think it made sense with organizational philosophy. And if it wound up playing out that way, I don't think it would be terrible for the Eagles either. There's a lot of reasons that Skoronski is a good player and would make sense, along with a bunch of other prospects that we will get into, and even more so tonight with Greg Cosell. Do want to remind everybody that Inside the Birds is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort Ocean Casino is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. I almost had that backwards there. Adam, had a great time the other night. I just want to let people know really quickly, we did our monthly Ask ITB live stream for our Patreon subscribers. We had some great questions, really great discussions too. I find it pretty cool when people just hop on just to talk football and not necessarily ask a question or just to hear how we're going to answer some of the other questions that other people ask. But it wound up being a really good discussion. So I wanted to thank everybody that was involved there. And then, of course, on Patreon, we had what I thought was really insightful and helpful conversation with a former Eagles personnel executive. His name is TJ McCrate. He was I believe his title was player personnel executive while he's with the Eagles for 5 years, from 2017 to 2022. And I thought, he gives some really good insights on how he thinks, how the team thinks, what it's like working for Jeffrey Lurie, And then, of course, this year's draft on the sort of the, if you want to call it a conundrum, what it would take. Is it pass rusher? Is it the high profile running back? That'll all be discussed in the meeting rooms this week at NovaCare.
Yeah, and he took us through the process, as he said. That was the really cool thing. What it's like the week of the draft, finalizing security, how they decide what's an off the field issue, it's a character issue, it's a football issue. It was really great. TJ was amazing. And I forgot that he was the Colts scouting director for many years, college scouting director. He got his start really with the Ravens and Ozzie Newsome. And that's I know he's a mentor of his and Joe Douglas, so it's a big deal to get him in. And I love what he said about what he learned from his Eagles, the time with the Eagles, about how they value defensive linemen. Because we both asked how every team he's worked. He also worked for the Cardinals. How these teams valued each position. It was very interesting to hear his insight on each facet of it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So check it out. To do so, you have to be a Patreon subscriber. That's patreon.com/inside the birds. You can get there. You can sign up. You can see that interview. You can see every interview we've done. We've had head coaches. We've had former offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, now a personnel person, a GM. And of course, every month we do an Ask ITB live stream that I post on the stream for everybody to see. There's polls. There's other interactive stuff. So again, that's patreon.com/inside the birds. All right, Adam. There was something I wanted to bring up really quickly before we dive headfirst into this. I forgot to mention that on Thursday night, tonight, when the Eagles were making picks, I think maybe I did mention it, that Greg Cosell will be with us on our live streams to kind of evaluate the picks and talk about them, and then maybe a little forecast for what's up next. So it's usually we have Greg, and we'll do this again. We'll have Greg after the draft to do a full recap on who the Eagles take and some of the moves in the NFL. But it's going to be pretty cool to have Greg on giving like instant evaluation of the Eagles making picks. So
and I hope they don't. I hope they have at least 6 picks. Don't be 4.
That would be bad.
Yeah, that would stink. Oh, one nugget also. This surprised me. Olamide Zaccheaus, we got his contract information yesterday. So since we're doing this now on Thursday, we could give you the terms since we're doing the show now. The thing that surprised me is he got $650,000 fully guaranteed at signing, and his total deal is only $1.23 million. So his full guarantee at signing, just to give you a comparison of how it is of their other players, he got a full guarantee at signing better than Terrell Edmunds did.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, were other teams involved?
Maybe.
I mean, not that $650,000 is a lot of money, but I mean, did you need to give him anything guaranteed at signing? And maybe there were other.
It's just another guy to sign after Nick Morrow, but to make more money for guaranteed money than Nick Morrow. Very odd.
Yeah, Nick Morrow got none. Yeah, it's just thought I'd throw that out. I thought that was interesting. When we get these terms sent to us, I look at them and I go, okay. Well, and I look back, I'm like, how's he getting more guaranteed at signing than some of these other players? And he's signing later, but it is what it is.
All right, so let's move on. We'll talk about tonight in the draft. Good note on Zaccheaus, though, and I think he actually can play a pretty decent role for this team. We'll see how that works out this year. All right, so before we get into names, let's talk about process, because at this time last year we said tonight would be sort of a seminal night for the Philadelphia Eagles moving forward, because it's going to be the reflection of a lot of work done by an almost entirely new scouting department. Not all new, but a lot of new faces. I mean, I don't have to go through all, and we know that there's a new director of player. Well, would you call not Brandon, would you call Charles Walls the director of player personnel? Or would you, because they have guys above him as well. He is the director of player personnel. That's his title, right?
Right, but Alec Halaby's ahead of him as assistant GM, right?
Right. So you have Alec Halaby as an assistant GM. You have John Ferrari as an assistant GM. But as we've outlined before, John Ferrari takes care of sort of, I don't want to say it's not involved in personnel, but Alec Halaby is more of the personnel GM, and he comes from an analytics background, and more on him in a second. Charles Walls came in from Cleveland. He's the director, I believe, director of player personnel, if I have that correct. They've got several guys who are head honchos in scouting, including Alan Wolking and Max Gruder and Anthony Patch. So those guys are holdovers, but guys like Brandon Hunt He's new. He's been doing both college and pro scouting. At least that's what his title says. Again, Charles Walls is a new guy, and it's a new role for Alec Hallaby, who's been with the team for a while, but obviously this is the most power he's had since he's been with the team, at least by title. And then, of course, there's the Julian Lurie influence in some form or fashion, even though his title is business and football strategy. That's so all encompassing that you have to imagine that, him with also an analytics background factors into the draft as well. So
Yeah, no,
that's
yeah.
my way of saying that this is different than the way it's been in the last
Oh,
few years.
totally. The last few years, it's been blown up. Let's call it like it is. It's
Yeah. No Andy
uh,
Weidel.
yeah. Andy Weidl's gone. He would always set the board, and Joe
Yep.
Douglas before that. No, this is a major difference. So to me, this is the first time that we're going to see how much analytics plays into picks. We'll know it. Sometimes the Eagles have taken picks and we go, wow, that's not really analytic based. I'm surprised. Okay, we'll see, because our arm length, depending on the team you speak with, it's more about there's certain measurables. For receivers, each team has their things that they look for. Defensive linemen, it's the 10 is very big for analytical data. Sometimes arm length is not as big a deal as it is with other teams. So we're going to learn a lot more about their process, because Alec Hallaby has a major say in what goes on here. I mean, let's face it, we talked about this a year ago. Anyone who follows the team knows he's got a pretty significant role right now. Assistant GM is you're one step away from being a GM, and it's not going to happen here, obviously. Right. But he's got a major say in what goes on. I don't want to say it funnels through him, because Howie makes the decisions, but a lot of it does go through him and the analytic team. So there's no way to know the percentage, but he definitely has a big say in it.
Yeah, and by the way, the reason why I was sort of reluctant with how I titled Charles Walls as director of player personnel is because Alan Walking is also considered director of player personnel. But we know that Alan comes from a college background, and that Charles Walls more of a pro personnel background. So it blends. I mean, they obviously are all going to be involved. But I just wanted to make that distinction. And then remember, there's no Catherine Rach with the team anymore. She is now with Cleveland. Is that right? Yeah, Cleveland. And
yes.
So So, and Matt Russell, right? He is now sort of in the Tom Donahoe role as senior advisor, there to kind of like keep everybody calm and give his veteran sage wisdom advice. So the roles similar, the names, a lot of them have changed. I want to get back to Hallaby, because we've talked about him in the past, and we have talked about, and not only us, it's been reported, and this goes back a couple of years now, that how did The Athletic describe him in that article? That sort of
shadowy figure.
Shadowy figure. Yeah. So that was now a couple of years ago, and I will say the sense that I've gotten is that his image and reputation is improving. Now, again, this is the night for him, where who knows what's going to happen, but it's very true that there was a lot of sort of, the coaches and the personnel people and the analytics people. It's not always an easy marriage, and there was always, I don't know if bitterness is the right word, but just or friction, but maybe friction is a good word. There was tension between these departments at times, and he was a part of that. Some people looked at him and said, "You're just a number cruncher, and you're not. You don't know actual like football the way we know football, and vice versa." But I've gotten the sense, just digging into this, that so far in this year since he's gotten this promotion, that people are happy with the way operations are running. I don't know if you've heard the same or similar intel, but that's what I've got.
I don't know I go that far, but I would agree with you on Alec getting along with people. Yes. So what happened, just to sum this up and move along, back in Chip Kelly era, he was not exactly well liked by the coaches and other people, because they didn't know him. And it was along the lines that you're saying. There was a mistrust with him. Mm-hmm. He wasn't one of theirs. And that's what you're talking about. When you're not a football guy by trade, you didn't come up and weren't raised the normal way, there's going to be like, who is this guy? Should we trust him, kind of thing. And it took him a long time to see that he's actually a pretty decent guy, and he's really smart, but he just doesn't have the same idea as you do. But there's got to be meaning in the middle. And that brings us to tonight's first round. And we'll see what happens. And remember, they only have 6 picks. And we'll get into the free draft needs in a minute, they still have a lot of needs to fill. They filled some needs, but they still have they pretty significant future needs and some current needs for the season.
Yeah. I would say though that my intel is that it's not just that they came around to him. He had to change and show that
Yeah.
he was adaptable and understood that numbers don't always tell the full story, and that he's getting better at understanding the football that might not match up to his numbers, and being a good not a negotiator there, but someone who you're working alongside there. But hey, that's good news now. But who knew going into 2020 what we'd be able to find out after that draft? All of a sudden, things going haywire. So, but yeah, you have to hope that the process continues to be smooth, and after this 3-day event, that it's the same. We'll definitely know if it's not. But that's really interesting. I think that that's kind of an under-discussed angle of this draft here, is that there's a new GM, new front office. Howie is still making the pick, but obviously he's got a little bit different of a mix of people around him. Do you look at this draft, Adam, and consider the quote unquote Super Bowl window factoring into it? Meaning the Eagles just were there. They have a very good team that can easily get back next year if without things having to like take lucky bounces or anything like that. Does that factor in at all to how you think they might be drafting?
I would say that because they still have needs. Some are bigger than others. Like I've got them down for like 7, but 2 of them they don't really need to address this season. It's more of a future need. Cornerback is not a need for the season, but it sure is going to be from future seasons. But in terms of the Super Bowl window and trying to get back, the concern is because of Kelsey's age, Lane Johnson's age, 2 corners' age, Fletcher Cox's age, Brandon Graham's age. You get to a certain point, you're like, okay, these are key starters. They're not going to be with you much longer. Time to win is now. But you don't want to start reaching for players because these guys are going to be up it. Like some of these guys could be done after 24. They all could be gone. So you don't want to look at it that way. But the fact of the matter is it's reality. So you have to look at it, but you don't want to panic. So there are 2 ways to look at it. The draft, again, is not about this year. It's the hope is that you're going to have these guys 5 to 7 years. But the fact of the matter is they have some holes that have to be filled. And when I look at it, the roster's still very good. The offense is going to carry this team, but it's an age factor for the future, which they have to look at. They have to start really looking at it now.
It is interesting to me how much Howie has talked about having 12 picks next year, while he only has 6 this year, right? Is that right? So, yeah, 6 this
This
year.
year, yeah.
I mean, I still think he'd love to be able to get more than 6 this year. But I do believe the way he's made his moves, which he typically does, which is getting starter caliber players at positions of immediate need, like a Terrell Edmonds, like a Moreau, right? Like Rashad Penny and what they've got with Sermon and running back there. I do think though that he can sense that part of this turning over the roster will probably be bigger emphasis next year, while as this year with only 6. I don't think he'll be afraid to make a move that would be aggressive, whether it's trading one of the picks for a player. We'll get into that tonight on the show, because that 30th overall pick to me sticks out like a sore thumb. As far as are there any guys? Last year he was able to get AJ Brown with a mid to high first round pick. Are there any guys he might have his eye on with the 30th overall pick, just to be able to bring in a proven player, because they do have an opportunity next year to win a championship, and then he doesn't have to feel so bad about it because they're going to have a boatload of picks next year.
Yeah, and if they do wind up having the 12, with the compensatories and so forth, again, you have to look at it and say, okay, what's the early projections on the draft next year at certain positions? Because that will play into it. That definitely will. It's not a major
Sure.
thing, but it's something teams do look at. Because safety, if you look at it, they have a 1-year situation with safety. That's all it is right now. And it's not a good one. Let's call it like it is. Justin Evans and Terrell Evans. I mean, if you want to go to the Super Bowl, that to me, that's not good enough. But as we've lamented for the history of our show, they just don't value the safety position. Other than Malcolm Jenkins, that's it.
Right.
And,
Right.
and over the last 5 years, I mean, that's been it. So
Right.
they just don't look at it. And that to me is still a significant need. I know they probably won't do Brian Branch at 30. Maybe there's some really good safety guys, and we'll get into more in tonight's show. But there's some great safety talent in round 2. Maybe that's where they address it.
Yeah, maybe. But then that goes to my point too. If you like Buda Baker, if they like him and he
Oh,
winds up becoming available and it costs a 3 and a 6, and how he's like, man, I barely got any picks, but I think he can afford to still be aggressive in that regard because next year he's got 12. This is not the year that the roster really turns over. It's next year when you're now, depending on what happens this upcoming season, if they don't make the Super Bowl, they're now 2 years removed. And you've got a lot of guys like Fletch and Jason Kelsey, or probably Brandon Graham. This probably will be the last year for most, if not all of them. And so then you've got those 12 picks to sort of start to really, really replenish your roster. So I just feel like it wouldn't surprise me if he was a little more aggressive than usual with these few picks, because he knows how many picks he has next year. And
yeah, no,
because he knows how good this team can be with one or two like proven like veteran. They
oh,
don't have to be Pro Bowlers, just one or two good starters added to the mix on defense.
and that could put him back in at the Super Bowl because this offense to me should be unstoppable.
Yep.
It really now again, if everybody's healthy, health as your roster gets older, you get concerned about that. But if the key players are healthy, they should have a phenomenal offense. It's the pass rush, because they don't have Hargrave, is a concern from the interior standpoint. There's no question about that. And then you got the two older corners who are still very good, but are they going to last? They're very lucky. They played roulette and they've rolled double sixes with the health. But that's to me, that is to me why you don't want to take that risk of just thinking like this is good enough. It's not good enough. It's a very good team, but it's not an elite roster anymore. And they if you want to get back there got to be a couple tweaks here and there through this draft.
100%. All right, let's take a look at some of the final pre-draft needs for the Philadelphia Eagles going into this draft. Before we do that, we're going to hear a word from some of our great sponsors. Okay, well, the Eagles' needs, they sort of stick out like a really, really sore thumb, right? I mean, we talk about them all the time. Safety is obviously a need. Defensive tackle. We talked about why safety is a need. Justin Evans, Terrell Edmonds, right? I guess Terrell Edmonds is definitely your starter. I don't
He
know if Justin
should.
Edmonds right now is your
Yeah.
starter, but if he's healthy, probably. But defensive tackle, like next to Jordan Davis, who himself is a question mark, and Fletcher Cox, you got Milton Williams or some type of rotation between Milton and Contavious Street. You think Contavious Street would start if they had to play a game today, or Milton?
It's a go. I have no idea. It's a training
Yeah.
camp decision. And again, the hope is that's not a decision because Milt Williams is a really good 3.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd rather have someone who's legit starter. Well, obviously it's Davis and Cox would be your, if Jordan Davis doesn't start, I'm going to be like, wow, this is not good. Because if he doesn't start, he didn't show up in good enough shape. Because from what I've heard, he's a pretty good kid.
Mm-hmm.
But does he understand a commitment to be great? That to me is going to be that'll ultimately decide how good he is. If he's healthy, is his commitment to being great. You can't just say, I want to be great. You got to go do it.
100%.
And that's going to be the key to him.
Be interesting to see if the Eagles come away this weekend with a drafted backup nose tackle so that they don't have to go, sign a veteran on the streets. Ideally, you would not like to have to do that, to draft one, unless he's just so good because he's on your board. But usually those players are one-dimensional, right? So they're not always ranked very high. It'd be interesting to see if the Eagles feel like they need to because of not getting Jordan Davis on the field enough last year. And as you mentioned, the shape that, because they're probably already seen him. We have not.
Yeah.
So after safety and defensive tackle, where do you go next for need?
I would say, they need another outside. They need another outside linebacker.
100%.
Yeah, you need that. They also could use. See, this is the thing. They could just say, "Oh, Nick Morrow and Dean are fine." Well, Dean's certainly got to start, but they're an odd man front. They're going to play 2 inside backers. Is Nick Morrow enough? Christian Ellis, we don't know about him. I know they don't value this position, but they need another guy in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be
I would agree with you 100%.
It doesn't have to be the second round. I'd be stunned if that happened, but we'll have some names for you tonight. There's some really interesting players that we're doing some homework on to see if they'd be fits. So that, and as I said before, like they don't have to draft a corner in this. They don't select a corner in this draft, but if they trade down and get more picks, it would be nice if they got a corner or a hybrid player. A guy could play outside corner, slot, or safety for the
100%.
future. Because it's these are future needs. This is about the draft. This is what you'd like to solve. And yeah, like you said, could they wait till next year? Absolutely. But if it's there, if the value is there in the second round, and they do trade down from 30 to get another second round pick and another pick, go for it.
If they drafted a guy on day 2 or day 3 that they project as a nickel, they think he's a really good nickel, may not be great on outside. You can play him there if need be. I would have no issue with it, given how many games Avonte Maddox has missed from injuries. And Maddox is good, and he's a great kid, and listen, great story. You know, 4th-round pick, got his extension and everything. Plays well when he's on the field. He was even playing really well in that Bears game that he got hurt again in, but he gets hurt a ton. And they suffered the consequences at times last year with trying to shoehorn what's the kid's name, number 33, and that it just didn't work out. Then they started playing Blankenship. And what's the kid they got from Jacksonville? His name is blank all of a sudden.
Oh, Josiah Scott.
Josiah Scott. Yeah, I mean, Josiah Scott got picked on, you know?
Oh, it didn't work at all. No, you're absolutely right. So those would be the needs as we head into the draft.
All right. So those are the needs. Now, let's get to, there's who they want and who's available. That's basically the question for every single draft. The Eagles pick 10. This has been described to me by a lot of personnel people I've spoken to, Adam, as one of the more crapshoot style drafts after number 1 than people can remember in a long time. Part of that is because the quarterback uncertainty. Part of that is because, as we've talked about many times on this podcast, it's not a draft loaded with blue chippers. Man, I heard Chris Ballard say he's got 20 first rounders. I heard somebody else say 17. And I'm like, interesting that they volunteered to come public with that. Teams that don't want other teams to think that they want to trade up would certainly say that, right? I got 20. I'm fine sitting here. I don't need to trade up for a quarterback, right?
Yeah, I
So
thought that was
I
funny.
think that's interesting because it doesn't jive with what you and I have heard.
Oh, and then this goes on what you're just talking about. Terry Fontenot, the GM of the Falcons, said he's never seen so much mystery and where he doesn't really know what is going to happen. And what he's trying to say is because of their lack of elite players.
Yes.
When there are 7 to 8 elite players in a draft, you could pretty much dictate where these players are going to go. This year, there are only 2. One has got major off the field concerns, Jalen Carter. And there's Bijan Robinson. He's a running back.
Right.
No, Tyree Wilson's a super freak. He's got unbelievable gifts, but he's a little raw and he's coming off foot surgery. So you have to take a leap of faith. I get that's what the draft is about. It's more about later on than now, which he's got to pass teams' physicals and his medical grade's got to be good enough that he's going to pass. Mm-hmm. So this is a tough draft, man. It's not easy doing a mock draft. My goodness, for Pro Football Network, I struggled with it, man. I call my usual people to get information from. They're asking me. I'm like, I don't know. You guys know more than I do.
That's funny. I mean, we struggled doing our own InsideTheBirds.com mock draft because, like you said, I like the Falcons, for example, are just such a wild card today. They need pass rushers. I could totally see them going running back with Bijan. They don't really have a quarterback. I mean, it's weird how nobody has linked them to wanting a quarterback. I mean, they were crazy in free agency. So it's not like they've got a whole lot of time to wait. I'm sure the owner is going to be like, listen, we need to start. You spent all that money. We need to start winning some games. So I just think people have told me to look out for a lot of trades. So trades like trades because they think that teams are here's how it was put to me. Not trades because everybody's trying to run up to get like so-and-so player that might fall because he's not a quarterback, but more trying to get the guy that fits what they want and they do more so than another. It's not like you're trying to outbid the other team. You just want to make sure you get the guy that you like, but 3 other teams may not like that guy. He may not fit their scheme. Nolan Smith's a great example. He's not for everybody, right? If you run a 4-3, a traditional 4-3, what are you doing with Nolan Smith? Are you putting his hand in the dirt at 230 pounds and running him off the edge? Probably not.
The thing about him is, and it is true, he's only 238 at the combine. He's really good against the run for a guy who's not obviously as big as you'd like. Now, as you said, some teams are going to go, like the tape's good. I want our guy more stout. I want him bigger physically. Okay, he won't be for every team, but then they're like he would fit the Seahawks very, very well. They won him 34. He fit the Eagles very well, but they may want their other outside linebacker to be way bigger physically because
Mhm.
Reddick's smaller. I mean, that's the fact of the matter is he's very small for that position,
Yes.
but he's just incredible talent. Now, when you look at some of the reasons why you would trade up, it's for certain positions, it's for certain players because you go, they may not be elite, but they're really, really good. And I'm not saying that like the Eagles are going to do this, but if you're a team like the Lions or the Raiders who have a major need at corner, and you see you're getting itchy, like the Eagles did when they traded up for Devontae Smith. Their board was getting hit. The grade that was on Devontae Smith said to them, you know what? Our tier is done after him. Go get him. That's why you do it. There's certain premium positions, corner, edge rusher, quarterback, obviously, that you would do it for. I can't believe anyone would trade up for Bijan Robinson, this top 10. I know he's a elite player. I mean, there's no doubt, but he's a running back. The value is not there. I don't see any player that you feel like you have to get that
Right.
there's no questions about. That's the other
Right.
part.
I agree. All right, it's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday this summer. They can't wait to celebrate with you. Join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes. Headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over $5 million in gifts and prizes, so be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun next time you visit. All right, so Adam, 10th overall. We'll work on that for this pod. 30th it could be forever. 10th overall. At this point, who do you think are the most likeliest guys to be available at 10th overall? And who do you think the Eagles really hope is available at 10th overall?
Paris Johnson, Peter Skoronski, Lucas Van Ness.
Mm-hmm.
Paris Johnson. I gotta run this for some people who really know how this works. Because Paris Johnson, I talked to more people like him. Not everybody likes him, but is he a guy that could be gone before the Eagles pick? I find it hard to believe, but there are a couple teams inside the top 10 that need offensive linemen. Cardinals at 3 seems too early for me. And this is it. And we don't know about this new GM. We just don't. Who comes over from the Titans and the Patriots, Monty Austinfort. We just don't know what his philosophy is going to be.
Yeah.
Skoronski, because he's only an offensive line coach. He was the first guy to mention Zach Martin to me. He goes, look, he goes, here's the thing. He goes, look, if I got him, he's going to be Zach Martin for me. Zach Martin, the Cowboys, as soon as they got him, they knew he could not play left tackle at this level. He could be a Pro Bowl guard. Guess what? He has been. This guy said, if I get Skoronski, he's going to be pro Bowl guard for us. So, and I asked him about Phil. I said, do you know, I don't know if you guys have played the Eagles in recent years. He goes, he goes, we all know Stout. We all know who he is. I'm sure he thinks he can make him a guard. I'm like, okay, that's interesting.
It's going to be interesting to see if Paris Johnson doesn't go 7 to the Raiders, which is as high as I can see him going at this point.
He'd play right tackle for them, though. Go ahead.
Right. He would. All right. I don't see the Falcons doing it because they've spent a lot on their offensive line.
Yeah, they're locked in.
I could see the Bears doing it. So that's me.
Yes.
And I think the Eagles would love it if the Bears took him and Van Ness was still on the board and Van Ness is 10. Because if Van Ness is there, I sense that they would just, run to the podium for him. He's the type of pass rusher with versatility, get off, everything. They can play him in different spots. Add to what did TJ McCray tell us? The Eagles believe they can never have enough defensive linemen, especially ones that you can move around and do different things, right?
This guy line up he's a multi-line player. He's a guy that people would be raving about him if he was a full-time starter because of that thing that Kirk Ferentz has that the underclassmen can't start. It's stupid.
Right.
But he's not the only coach who does it. I get it. It's tradition. Right. But he's got all sorts of movement ability. He's super strong and powerful. He's a power striker. The word in scouting is he finds something, like he did this to Paris Johnson. I think it was Paris Johnson. He got Paris Johnson. He moved him back. He finds something off tape. He doesn't have a lot of moves. He's a pure power player. But when he finds something, he goes right at it and he knocks the guy off the ball. And he's not like 300 pounds. He's like 270. Remember, He was a smaller player. he's put on a lot of mass over the last couple of years, but he's an interesting player. I know that Skronsky's boring, folks. I get it. You don't you want juice, you want Bijan, and that's the value of Bijan Robinson is a major discussion for teams right now.
Right.
He's so gifted.
Right. So we'll get to Bijan in a second. So Paris Johnson, Peter Skronsky, Van Ness, a lot of mocks, and not that we feed into them, but it's out there. So a lot of mocks seem to feel that Miles Murphy and or Nolan Smith could be Eagles at 10th overall. I feel like the feedback I get, Murphy maybe. I just, again, going back to Nolan Smith, who great college player, no doubt about it. Tested well. I mean, he's great edge speed, not a lot of positional versatility, very light. If you're the Eagles, you can only play him in the same spot Hassan Reddick, I would think, plays, unless you've got two sort of small overhang. When I say small, I mean two light overhang players, and you move Josh Sweat inside on pass rush downs and Brandon Graham inside. We know they can do that. So it can be done. I feel like those would be trade down type guys for the Eagles instead of picking at 10. Just my early sort of vibe on that. Do you have a different?
Yeah, Murphy, I got him in my mock for Pro Football Now at 8. See, he's a power. He's a big dude. Like he's way bigger than Nolan Smith.
Big.
Again, it's the variables. Bill Polian had certain variables that he wanted. Bill said because Tony Dungy did not want big. He didn't want 270 DNs. He wanted 230 to 240. Robert Mathis was perfect for that. Dwight Freeney, perfect for that. Dwight Freeney also, by the way, was not very tall. It depends on what your staff wants. And again, oh, by the way, the Eagles have a new D coordinator. Now, Gannon, as you noted on our show 2 years ago, didn't have any specifics. He was okay. He wasn't worried about how big or small these guys were. But this guy, Sean Desai might. So we'll learn a lot about that as we go along here. But you see, Skronsky to me, it's like if you don't get him, if it comes down to like Van Ness or Skronsky, or if Van Ness and Paris Johnson are off the board and Skronsky, and they pass on him, it's not the end of the world. Maybe there's somebody else I like. We'll get that in a second. But it's not a guy you have to have. It fills a current and future need. Right guard, they don't have one.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it makes a whole lot of sense with organizational philosophy, what they look for. I mean, it's not like it's not a penalty that team see him as a right guard, because they see him as a very, very good, if not elite, right guard. At least the team's not very technical, just a real technician. So he overcomes the short arms, which aren't as big of a deal when you're inside, with his technique and his form, and he just understands all of his assignments really well. I mean, he's really sound. And they said the same things about Rashawn Slater, except he could play tackle at a really high level. But I remember people telling me about Rashawn Slater, also from Northwestern, that if a team wanted to play him at guard, they could because of the short arms, and that the one thing they would never have to worry about is the football intelligence, the technique, the form. They thought he would be just a phenomenal guard who could also be a phenomenal tackle. So I don't hear too many question marks on Peter Skronsky's actual game, just whether or not he can move out and play tackle. So that's a pretty clean prospect for you for the offensive line there. It's to extend the conversation you were saying about Paris Johnson. I've heard more things like footwork can be better, punching, his sink between his punch and his feet could be better, sinking the hips. Don't hear that about Pete. So that's where I think is the difference there, and why I wouldn't be disappointed by it.
Yeah, the issue with Johnson from his 21 tape when he played right guard, by the way, that was the position, ironically, the position the Eagles have a need for. Told two things there. The technique was poor because you're changing the way you use your hands, just in the way you hold them up, because it's a different technique, and then the footwork, because it's completely different from when you're playing in the phone booth. So it's harder. It was harder for him. Remember, he got asked to do it the last second due to injury. So that's and it comes. We're gonna have more about this tonight. We have some stuff on this. We're trying to work on make sure it's correct. But the situation here is and we asked TJ McCreight this, the former Eagles executive. We said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Oh, Howie, offensive, defensive line. It's a 10." And that's what everyone around the league tells us.
Right.
So it's gonna be probably a boring pick.
Probably.
Most like
What do they say? Steady and slow wins the race, doesn't it?
Yeah. Unless they
Sometimes
do,
it's boring too.
and we'll work on Jalen Carter too. We you get something finalized on that as well.
All right. We'll wrap this up with a little Bijan conversation first. We'll tell everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with all their coverage of Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com or on Twitter at phlsportsnation. And now let's hear a word from our friends Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you hop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You'll get a great deal. Oh, we saved the best and most exciting for last, Adam, because, I mean, we don't even have to do a poll or a pie. I mean, everybody wants Bijan Robinson. They want him. The fans want him. Overwhelmingly. We did a poll on Patreon. It was like I had like 4 guys. 68% of the poll said they wanted Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, it's one of these situations. It's funny, people call him a unicorn because he's like McCaffrey. I mean, McCaffrey was thought to be a Hall of Fame type talent. He still probably is. He probably won't make it because of his injury history, but we'll see how much the rest of his career takes on here. But you have to see, the thing with Bijan is you got him, if the Eagles take him, you got him for 5 years, 4 years plus his 5th-year option. Then, the Eagles don't like using the franchise tag. We get that. But it's not like you're drafting for 1 year. You're drafting for 5 years. That's the way you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why Howie Roseman has to take a serious look at this decision. It's not what they do. It's not the way they think. But there's sometimes they're outliers. And just talking to all these people, all these personnel people you and I have had on our show, Rick Spielman, Bill Polian, Joe Banner, the list goes on and on and on. There are exceptions to every rule. Even Joe said that, where he was very stubborn. Every once in a while, there's an exception. If someone is that special, you have to look at it. That's the way that Howie looked at a Christian McCaffrey. It's not what they want to do historically, but he's such a game changer. Well, guess what? Let's move it up 6 years. So is this kid. Now, I just my sense is, and that I said earlier, I don't see him unless the Falcons take him. I don't see him going in the top 10. But if the Eagles do trade down, maybe he's a trade down candidate. We'll see. But the fact of the matter is, this guy's a game changer. And this is not an elite draft. Howie knows this. Everybody knows this.
Yeah.
Get the elite player if you feel the value is there, because you don't find running backs. There are a lot of good ones in every draft, but this guy is so special that he supersedes like what your board looks. Okay, well, geez, we like an offensive line because we have an issue right guard. We need a D line. We need a DN. We need a guy who could stand up. We need a guy who could play with his hand down. That's all great. But those grades are going to be lower than Bijan's grade. You could hear TJ McCray talking about this when he breaks down the Eagles grading system. Now that I know it gets tweaked, but at least we know the general idea of it. There's Bijan's grade has to be higher. We know that.
Right. I wouldn't put it past Howie to work some magic on the phones, right? If only 2 quarterbacks are gone in the top 10, and he gets to 10, and there's no Van Ness and no Johnson, no Skronsky, and Howie starts calling up Houston at 12. Remember, let's assume Houston didn't take a quarterback at 2, or calling up who was that we said might take Tampa Bay at 19, saying, hey guys, I got this offer for Levis. Somebody wants to move up, even if nobody really does, right? Just to try to get out of 10, drum up the fact that he's got to trade for the quarterback with those 2 teams that would want a quarterback to try to move down, then get Bijan Robinson, and then also be able to add to your stockpile of picks. I think you and I both agree. It feels like if it's going to happen with Bijan, it's going to be via a trade down. But again, there has to be somebody who wants to
it's
trade
a gut
up.
feeling. We don't know that for sure, but that would be just getting the value of him from other teams as they love him, but who's really willing to pull trigger on a running back because of the the shelf life of running backs, off the ball linebackers, running backs have the shortest shelf life. That's just
They
the way it
do.
is.
They do. It would probably be a mistake for the Falcons, as great as he is, because that would be like when the Giants took Saquon and they didn't have enough to really be competitive, and didn't get the best years yet so far of Saquon's career, although he's starting to come back on it. But the whole Bijan angle is going to be the highlight of Thursday night. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be fantastic, and we're all ready to break it down later tonight. Myself, Adam, Greg Cosell, 3 straight trades of coverage. Andrew DeCecco is going to come on board Saturday. He's going to give you all the day 3 guy. He studies these guys like I eat food, man. I mean, he's all over it. He knows everything. He's Coastal Carolina, McNeese State. He knows these guys. So look forward. Yeah, Andrew. He's got his eyes on all the small schools and day 3 guys. It's going to be a great time. Look forward to doing it. And again, 6:00 tonight. Me, Adam, and Greg Cosell will start kicking it off. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.
All right. You good?
Yep, I'm good.
All right. I'll see you.